How good of a chance does Florida have to beat Miami? That's Brandon Olsen, Locked On Gators, joining me to discuss. I noticed a line movement the other day, Brandon, because that's what I do in my free time. It went from Miami minus 3.5 week one in Gainesville to Miami minus 2.5. Now, I don't know if that's public money or if that's sharp money, but somebody somewhere is confident in the Gators. Why?
Well, it's me in Queens, New York. That's who it is. It's me. I put my life savings on it. I think that Florida. Look, I don't think Florida's a great team. I don't think Miami's a great team, but I do think that both teams are in a kind of rough spot where they're not really proven on either side. Both are really young last year, and you're expecting more from them. But Florida's the team that has a returning starting quarterback. Florida's the team that's at home in what I think is a top 2 environment in college football right now. Like, just that stadium, the Swamp, is insane to me. I feel like there's no good line for this, so I do think that it's fair to just go home team should win in this one because it's probably just going to be ugly either way.
Well, I think that's entirely possible. You're going to have the week one and early season kinks getting worked out as Cam Ward works his way into a new offense with new weapons and such. I think that transition could be very good for him. He's going to have the best offensive line and running game that he has had in his college career by a landslide. It's not even close. He was on some solid Wazoo teams, but they were not able to build him an offensive line or a running game, which is why I'm really high on what Miami could be this year, because I think they have a decent shot to unlock Cam Ward's full potential this year. Of course, they have Damian Martinez to join him in the backfield. Should be a very, very strong rushing attack. But I contrast this line movement, Brandon, and it doesn't make a lot of sense in my brain because over this same time period, the last couple weeks or months, depending on the exact day when everything shifted, Florida's now down to a 4.5 win total team. Now look, everybody who follows college football knows Florida has the hardest schedule in the country. That's not even arguable. I know Brandon is fake surprised for all of you listening on podcasts right now. 4.5. This isn't a 4.5. Like, that's bordering on if you go under, you're kind of a bottom dweller in the league. Florida's not that, right?
Not at all. I don't think so. I think that the schedule just being what it is, everyone's just like, oh, they're going to lose games. Like they won 5 games last year, and their schedule is harder this year. So it makes a lot of sense. But I don't understand the 4.5 win total. I did a full episode when that win total came out that I was like, oh, I don't know who did it, but thank you, because I took it. I promise you.
You need to get Daniel Craig's character from Knives Out on the case to figure out who done it.
Yeah, I need to. By the way, they're making a 3rd one. Actually,
I'm so excited. I would watch 27 of those movies if they kept making them.
Yep. Genuinely, you can make as many as you want. I will be there. Make it the next Fast and Furious.
Yep, I will keep watching.
But I don't really know where the 4.5 win total comes from. And I'm not one of the Florida Gators fans that's like, they're winning 9 games this year. But 4.5 is a bit low, especially when you consider you've got, 7 home games this year. You've got Samford on the schedule as 1. You've got Mississippi State as one of your very few road games. I think that's one of the things for Florida is that you don't have a lot of road games this year. The ones that you do have are pretty tough for the most part. It's Florida State, it's Texas, it's Tennessee, and then Mississippi State's the only one that's not a really difficult one there. But I think if you look at 4.5 wins, realistically, I think a lot of Florida Gators fans expect you to hit that total by the time the Georgia game comes in week 9.
I want to bring it back to this Miami and Florida game. It's the best game of week 1 outside of where game day will be, which is Texas A&M, Notre Dame at College Station. That's going to be electric. But those are really the 2 highlight, premier, impact, playoff ramification games that you've got on the slate in week 1, which is pretty typical for a college football season because scheduling, as I have repeated ad nauseum and will continue to do so, is completely broken and doesn't make any sense in college football. And if I'm ever elected commissioner, that'll be my day 1 initiative there. But I digress. It's campaign season. Brandon's on my mind. So I think in this game, you've got a quarterback advantage to Miami. I think you've got a running game advantage to Miami. Receivers with Elijah Badger in there, that's a wash, maybe even lean towards Florida. Xavier Restrepo is a football player, and he is a darn good one for the Hurricanes amongst other weapons that they've got. Defensively, I think I feel better about Miami. Head coach, look, I don't know if we fully know what Billy Napier is at the highest level, I don't feel great about Mario Cristobal in game, but I also know that he's won a decent amount of football games in his coaching career. I think that's on the back of the talent that his rosters have. And I think he has a talented roster here. And the win total expectation is such for Miami for a reason, because they have a really talented roster. Do you feel like Florida is an underdog with the better roster here?
Yeah, kind of. I do. Like I said, I think both of these teams are very young last year. Both of them had that argument last year of, well, we're not very good. Like, sure, Miami made a bowl game. But the argument is we're not very good right now. Watching these games, watching these teams, we know neither of them are awesome, but they're young. That's why we sit through it. I've said this before. I think Cam Ward very well may be a better quarterback than Graham Mertz. Been a big fan of Cam since the Incarnate Word days. Was a fan in there. I knew him back then.
He was balling at the FCS level. Balling in the South.
Rice Award winner for the Southwest the FCS level. I'm just saying. However, he's going to be in week 1 with this team in the Swamp, which is not an easy environment to replicate or play in there. So while he very well may be the best one on the field, I don't think they've got the quarterback advantage in that game. I do think that home field advantage is very big for Florida. I mean, we've seen Florida take some teams to deep water in the Swamp where they had really no business in recent years, with some of the Dan Mullen teams and Napier in his first year there. Not so much last year. But I do think that Florida's roster is undervalued right now. And for me, I think Miami's roster is – I'm more confident Miami's roster is overvalued than I am in Florida's roster being undervalued. I think that
Really?
I think that when you have as many transfer portal additions as Miami had, you need a lot of stuff to go right to get them gelling and moving like the machine they need to be in week 1. I've got some hesitancy there, especially because they added a few key pieces in that second portal window, so it didn't even have spring. And like Damian Martinez is not part of that. Like Damian Martinez is a
as a running back.
And as a running back,
take the ball when it comes to you and make guys miss. It was pretty standard.
Yeah, so I'm not even harping on that one too much, but I do think that them trying to replace as much of their defensive line as they're trying to replace in week 1, expecting them to come out and play damn well, hard sell for me, man.
I think that is an interesting angle to look at this game. Something that I can't shake out of my head with Miami is that calamity for Canes fans against Georgia Tech. Brandon, do you remember what Miami's record was going into that game?
I'm assuming they were like 4-1, 5-1.
They were no. They were 4-0.
No.
They were on the doorstep of 5-0. And I think in college sports, I think this applies to professional sports too. There's something to be said about momentum and keeping it rolling. I think that took the wind out of Miami's sails. They made a bowl game last year. I don't think they came close to hitting their ceiling. They bring back some key guys. I love what they've done in the transfer portal. I can't shake. If they avoid a game like that, and certainly, this Florida game will be their first opportunity to not do that. But if they avoid that Georgia Tech loss a year ago, I'm not so sure Miami doesn't win 8 games instead of 6. And I think they feel differently for you going into this one.
Maybe, but hey, woulda, shoulda, coulda, but they didn't. And right now I'm looking at the same head coach that had that gaffe at the end of the Georgia Tech game, or the same head coach that was in charge when that gaffe happened at the end of the Georgia Tech game. And I'm looking at a team that has to come into the Swamp. And again, it's week 1. If this game was even week 4, week 3 even, I would have a different attitude towards it. But I'm looking at week 1 with a team that's trying to piece things together, and just they had question marks going into the offseason. And on paper, you addressed it. Same thing you said, same thing with Florida's offensive line. Florida's offensive line should be better this year. On paper, they addressed the needs that they had. We'll see if it actually works. But for me, I think Miami is very dependent on transfer portal players hitting. And as we've seen so often, doesn't happen. I live by the general rule of however many players you have expectations for, you probably got 10% that are going to actually hit those expectations, 10% they're going to fail miserably, and the other 80% are going to be somewhere in the middle of your expectations there.
That's a nice, clean line to end today's show on. Brandon Olsen, Locked On Gators, Week 1, Florida, Miami, in the Swamp. It inches ever closer. Brandon, thanks for stopping by.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Can't wait to be in the Swamp.
I am a little bit jealous of that. Just a little. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.